Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
We're ready for the event.
WXOW-TV, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call the station for a voice check.
The station, this is WXOW-TV. How do you hear me?
We have you loud and clear, and we're looking forward to talking to you today.
All right. We are joined this morning by a pair of very special guests, astronauts Jeff Williams from Winter, Wisconsin, and Kate Rubins aboard the International Space Station. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, I have to ask, you seem to have the coolest job in the galaxy. Does that still resonate, or does it get to be just a job after a while?
Well, I don't think you could ever say it gets to be just a job after a while. The uniqueness never fades up here. Being able to work and play in weightlessness and being able to view the Earth, it just never gets old. It's an incredible opportunity that I think none of us ever really take for granted, no matter how long we've been here.
And now, Kate, you've just arrived on the ISS. What is a daily life like so far? Like, if you get into an argument with another crew member, can you slam a door, an airlock or something, and cool off a little bit? I guess just give us an idea, what kind of size of a craft are we looking at there?
Well, the first thing that we noticed as we approached the space station, even despite all the training that we've been through, is just how amazingly huge it is. It's phenomenally impressive when you get up close to it. And so there's actually an enormous amount of interior volume. We've got a number of modules, and we're also incredibly fortunate that we have an amazing crew. So there's no need to go shut yourself off in the airlock or anything like that. But there's a lot of space up here. Part of that's due to just the fact that we've got so many different nations working in this laboratory. There's a lot of modules from different nations, and a lot of room to get our work done up here.
Yeah, that is fantastic to hear. Now, we reached out to some people for their questions. Here's one from Nisa Taunt on Facebook, who asks, what's one thing, for both of you, about living in space or on the ISS that you really didn't expect?
Yeah, so we watch people from the ground all the time, and you get a sense of how folks move around up here. But one of the most interesting things for me, and the challenges has been early on, is just how you control yourself in all 6 axes in weightlessness. And you can watch it on TV all day long, but when you're actually trying to make sure that you can stabilize and do some work, it's a lot harder than I expected.
And Jeff, Andrew Steger on Facebook asks, what sort of emotions for you go through your mind when you pass over the state of Wisconsin? I'm sure you've seen it a couple of times from up there.
Oh yeah, I've seen it many times, and I'm sure your listeners and viewers have seen some of the photography I've taken of Wisconsin along with everywhere else in the world. But when I pass over, it brings back my childhood years, my growing up there, and all the great memories I had there, growing up on a farm just outside the village of Winter, a farm that my grandfather carved out of the woods after he immigrated from Sweden. My mother was born there. She passed away there in the same house. The homestead's still in the family. So friends and extended family are still there. So all of those memories come back every time we pass over.
Yeah, Jeff, your photography is quite stunning. You post a lot of those photos on your Twitter account. Now, is that just something that's developed as a hobby, or is there something more you hope to achieve or inspire with these photographs?
Well, I learned the first time I went to space in the year 2000 that when you come back, a lot of times the details of the experience happen so fast that you can't remember them all. You can't capture them all in your memory, and the memories fade away quickly. But the photography captures the moment. And so I grew in appreciation right off the bat. In later years, I grew in the appreciation to bring in the experience to people on Earth, and that's how I attempt to do it. So I'm mostly motivated to take the photography to share the experience vicariously to the folks on Earth.
Yeah, Yeah, Jeff, now I know you know there's a storied tradition of space flight here in Wisconsin, Deke Slayton being both a key figure for both NASA and our heritage in the Badger State. What does it mean to you to now carry the flag for Wisconsin?
Well, I've always been proud to be from Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a beautiful state. The people are great. It's got a great reputation. It's got a great future. So I'm proud to represent the people of Wisconsin. I love to go back there and speak to folks. I get back to the hometown, into the area, in different parts of Wisconsin, actually, speaking in different groups now and then. And I'm just proud to represent the state of the people of Wisconsin doing this job.
Okay, you're studying DNA sequencing up there. We're learning so much more about this and genetics, but there's so much more we don't yet know. What, I guess, do you hope to accomplish with this mission?
Yeah, we've got an amazing research program, and it's really the collaborative efforts of about over 200 different investigations. So we're focusing on understanding genomics and what's going on in cells during spaceflight. One of the things I just set up this morning actually was a work volume in order for us to study heart cells. So we're interested in how cells behave in microgravity once they're in free fall. What kind of signaling happens, what happens to their structure and behavior. And so we're going to start to understand a lot of that in the coming months and years ahead.
And what sort of impact do you think that'll have for research and human life in general here on Earth?
I think a lot of it is basic research, so we're just getting some fundamental understanding about how things behave in microgravity. And sometimes that might not seem like it's particularly relevant to life on Earth, but we can understand a lot of things about bone loss, osteoporosis, muscle wasting, immune system changes. There's a lot of diseases on Earth that actually we have some excellent ways to research that on station. And some of these things we can only look at in microgravity. So this is the only place, I would say in the world, but it's off the world. This is the only place off the world that we can actually study gravity as a variable to understand important factors in human disease.
Yeah, that is certainly something amazing. Jeff, with this mission, I've read you'll set the record for the most cumulative days in space. And we know NASA is studying the effects of long-term spaceflight on humans with the Kelly brothers, Scott and Mark. But what have you noticed about your extended stays on the ISS?
Well, when I think about that, I think about the space station itself and the achievement of the space station. I was honored to be among the early crews when we first started building this, and then came back halfway through, and then came back about the time we were completing the assembly, and now we're in the full utilization mode. So what amazes me most about the experience I've had in my career is the incredible accomplishment that this international partnership has done in what we call the International Space Station. There's going to be a lot of things that come out of the space station, research programs, science programs, and whatnot, but probably the biggest achievement, in my opinion, is the space station itself, being able to build it and operate it for so many years in an international way that we've been able to do it. So, and that's going to build the future for future exploration.
Yeah, and speaking of future exploration, there's an international docking adapter that's being installed to make it easier for commercial flights now to dock at the station. What do you both see with this as the future of human space flight?
Well, certainly the near-term future for the space station will be gaining the capability through commercial crew vehicles to rotate part of the crew from U.S. soil. And, of course, that's very important for us. That's the next step. We're going to, as you mentioned, add a docking adapter that's going to be delivered here next week on the SpaceX Dragon. And then we'll go out, Kate and I will go out to do a spacewalk to install that thing, and that'll prepare the place for those commercial crew vehicles to dock. And that's a natural progression. I think if you look at the history of aviation, look at the history of other technologies, it has started out very expensive and maybe not a market in it, so it's the governments historically have done that basic development, early development, and then eventually it migrates over to the commercial world and ends up being, working out a business model to be able to to exploit it in terms of economic systems, and it's no different with this. So that's that chapter of the future. Of course, NASA and other government agencies are looking toward exploration beyond Earth orbit, going back perhaps to the moon, and of course you hear about eventually getting to Mars. Mars is a destination that's a little bit far away yet. It's going to take some work to get there, but in my opinion, we'll end up doing something in the lunar system prior to that.
That's certainly exciting. We look forward to following your progress. Jeff Williams, Kate Rubins, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
It's been great to talk to you.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the WXOW-TV portion of the event. Please stand by for a voice check from Reuters Science.
Station, this is Irene Klotz at the Kennedy Space Center and Julie Steenheinsen in Chicago with Reuters. How do you hear me?
We hear you loud and clear. It's great to talk to you today.
Thank you. You too. Commander Williams, I'd like to start with you. What's the plan for installation of the commercial crew vehicle's docking adapter once it reaches the ISS, hopefully next week?
Well, it'll come up in the external compartment of the Dragon cargo vehicle. The SpaceX will launch that next week, as you said. And after we get through the track and capture of it and get it berthed to the International Space Station, we've got a lot of science on board. That's going to be the first priority, but eventually we will get our spacesuits ready and prepare to go outside. The ground will actually grab the docking adapter with a robotic arm and pluck it out of the Dragon spacecraft and pre-position it very close to its final place, which is going to be at the very front end of the space station on the mating adapter that the space shuttle used to launch or dock to. And then we will go out in our spacesuits, get out there, and the ground will command the robotic arm to bring it very close, probably with less than an inch away from its mating interface. And then we will do the work to get it attached to the space station with the aid of the ground and that robotic arm. Once we get it attached, we'll connect up data and power cables, so then the hooks can be commanded so that its final sealing surface can be made to the space station. Very important, critical. It's absolutely necessary for the future activities of launch and commercial vehicles and docking to the space station.
Thank you. For Dr. Rubins, what experiments are you personally most looking forward to working with while you're on station?
All of the science. There's quite a bit actually. It's a phenomenal research program, and obviously my background is molecular biology and life sciences, so that's the part that I just understand from my previous work. I'm really looking forward to experience on heart cells and also osteoblasts, the kind of cells that generate bone. They're constantly regenerating bone in your bone tissue. Also really looking forward to some of the genomic analysis that we're going to be doing, looking at the first DNA sequencing in space. There's been a lot of renewed interest in trying to understand what's going on at a molecular level when we're on board the space station. And this is really the only lab that we can take a look at that. This is the only place that we have these tools to actually look at gravity and the human body as a system.
Thanks. So speaking of the DNA sequencer, have you seen or smelled anything on station yet that you'd really like to analyze?
We were joking because one of the things that a microbiologist does is they take surface samples everywhere, and I think folks are a little bit worried that they're going to run out of samples while I'm up here because I'm going to be so interested in doing some experiments. But I think our water system is a phenomenal example. We've got wonderful clean water, but we've got a water system that's been up here for 15 years. So I think it's a really interesting question to see, do we have any microbes that obviously aren't pathogenic to humans? We've been fine up here, but do we have any microbes living in this system? And if so, what kind of selection pressure have they been on living in space station for 15 years?
Oh, are you going to have an opportunity to do any of that analysis, or are you going to be strictly limited to the samples that are flying up with the analyzer next week?
So we're going to start out with the samples that are flying up with the analyzer, and we're just going to take a look at this piece of equipment. It's really technology development to understand how this is working in the microgravity environment. Technology behaves differently up here. Fluids behave differently up here. Bubbles form in fluids, and so it's going to be a really interesting piece of equipment just to check out and to understand. And there's definitely future plans, I know, to use not just the sequencer, but an entire suite of equipment we have developed up here. Jeff did some experiments recently to develop a couple different kinds of machines to look at PCR, to look at single genes. And so we are going to use those in the future to look at microbes, to look at cells in the human body, to look at any kind of system that could have a microgravity influence.
Thank you very much, and I'm turning over to Julie now.
Hi, Kate. I'd like to expand a little bit more on that. I'm curious to know what's the first experiment that you're going to do using the DNA sequencer, and when do you plan to do that?
Yeah, so we're going to be doing that shortly after SpaceX 9 arrives, and the ground teams have come up with an incredibly well thought out first set of experiments, and what we're going to do is sequence the genome of a virus, lambda-phage, which is not a pathogenic virus. It's a standard one used in the lab. We're going to sequence a bacteria, again, not harmful, just one that we standardly use in the lab, and we're going to sequence mouse genome. And those are all three mixed together so that we can determine how the sequencer works on these different organisms.
And I understand that, like your colleague Sarah Wallace was hoping for something a little more exotic, but you sort of steered her into using some very commonplace pathogens, or not pathogens, but samples. So why was that?
So I think people always look at my background and think I'm going to do something crazy science fiction on space station. But we do have a lot of controls up here. Anything that we bring up to the space station has to be checked for safety because we're living in a closed-loop environment. So we're very careful to maintain all of those safety controls so we don't harm the occupants of the space station. But because it is a closed-loop environment, that also provides some of the really interesting scientific questions that we want to answer. We recycle our air, we recycle our water, and we've been doing that constantly as long as we've had human presence on board the space station. So we balance the safety concerns, and then we've also got a fantastic research environment to really learn some completely novel things about how human beings behave in a closed-loop environment.
You know, I'm curious to know, I mean, this is a very portable device, which is it's something kind of unique for a DNA sequencer. Have you used this device before? I know that it was used, for example, in Congo for Ebola, and you were there. Is this something that you're familiar with?
Yeah, so when I was running lab, I actually used a little bit older style sequencing technologies because we didn't have to worry about having things that were so portable. But this kind of device is something that you would use in the developing world. You could use this in an outbreak situation. You could use it in a clinic where you don't have a lot of resources necessarily to buy a full-scale sequencer. But you can enable some kinds of diagnostic tests in really resource-poor settings. So I think there's going to be a lot of future development with these small portable technologies. And Space Station is an amazing place to test that out. We have constraints here like power constraints, all of our powers from the solar arrays, data constraints, and we have to engineer devices that are going to work in Space Station. Those same things are going to work in the most remote regions on Earth.
I'm curious to know, how is this going to improve the health of astronauts in the space station?
Well, right now we take samples and then we send them down on SpaceX, which actually has the ability to send down cold and frozen samples, and scientists can later analyze that. But we have a little bit of a lag, so we don't actually get to look at what's going on, and we don't get to analyze everything that's happening to human beings or to cells really in real time. These kinds of small, portable genomic technologies are going to let us look in real time what's actually happening to bone degradation, for example, what's happening to your immune system, what's happening to a population of microbes that you bring up in a culture flask.
All right, I'm going to wrap up. I've got one more question. How can the sequencer be used to detect life on Mars or elsewhere?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question, and is one of the things that NASA is very interested in technology development for. And one of the first things that we need to prove is just how this technology operates in microgravity. And so that's what we'll be doing the checkout when it comes up on SpaceX-9, is how the fluid layer behaves, what happens with bubbles forming, and is this kind of technology something that we can use in space? And that's one of the amazing things about Space Station, is it's a proving ground for all of these future technologies that we're going to develop for exploration missions.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event. Thank you.